How you doing there? Had to do that 2 or 3 times to get the damn thing going. Electronics. So spoiled us in our electronic world. Hey, I'm Thomas Nyback. Day 259. 365 days towards racial change. Glad you're with us. Welcome newcomers, new subscribers. If this is the first time joining us, message is very simple. We don't advocate any hate, but the content can probably be challenging. I won't dismiss that potential, but we're just going to try to muddle through the best we can together on this journey. We're here talking about Black issues in America, solutions, problems, history, economics, inclusion, exclusion, marginalization, all these things, all these issues are very important, and want to get at the heart and the root of these issues, problems that Black people face in America. Now, granted, I'm not a representative of Black people in any way. I'm just expounding on information I have, my personal experience, and see if we can come to some consensus, and if we can just move the notch, the trajectory of Black people just a hair. I know it can have hopefully some positive impact somewhere down the line in the future. You ask any navigator, um, astronomer, somebody that's going to go a long distance. If you start out just a tad off, just a degree, even half a degree away, you're going to compromise your destination. I personally would like to see Black people grow in number and grow in their participation in America's landscape, in America's, just America's got a lot of great things going on. Yet Black people are the last to receive it. We seem to be under some kind of generational curse as far as getting our needs met, moving freely in the landscape. It's almost like slavery has given license to white people and other groups to treat us poorly, exclude us, make it hard for us to move as comfortably and as freely as other groups do in America. On that note, you'll find what I say consistently over time is my concern for Black folks, the Black mind, how it engages, how it relates, what it is, its demeanor, stance in America, what is it, or its hopes and dreams. How educated is the Black mind on these issues that we talk about here? Do Black people care? Do we understand that America treats us differently? We're American citizens, yet we have to navigate and bear America's dysfunction here, and that just should not be so. So we deal with that. And what I say often, almost every time, what about the white mind? What's that feel like to have that privilege, to have that ease of movement, success in America, to be able to, consistently have your vacations and your privileges and your movement in the workplace and all these things. Is there any conviction about that? Rumor has it that white people feel some kind of way about the mistakes of their ancestors, Now, granted, there's a portion of all white people that feel fully justified that their ancestors captured, raped, imprisoned, and coerced free labor from black people. But we don't talk about those white people. We know they're out there. Uh, but some of the people, some white people feel some kind of way that their ancestors did that. But it's too bad that it doesn't translate into motivation to bring about some positive change for black people. That's the challenge. If I feel that my ancestors treated their ancestors a certain way, do I have an obligation to engage in some type of um, reciprocal exchange today to right the wrongs of my ancestors? That's something I think white people need to think about, get with, because this is a conversation. It obviously doesn't go away. It's not going away anytime soon. A lot of bad stuff. Um, it still is an issue in America. A long way to go to work on some of these things. I'm inspired by a man. Oh, don't forget about your financial literacy as well. You know, I, my my zeal on that issue has faded a little bit because, I was just reflecting today. I haven't made some of the gross errors that I used to make around money. For me, it was drugs and alcohol, so that creates an extreme rate of change on a person's financial position when addiction kicks in to a person's life. Finally being away from that for a space of time has given me some stability on that issue. And I was reflecting, I had some gratitude about it. But, it was like, wow, I've been carrying some of these greenbacks for a while. I've had this bank that I'm with, I haven't overdrawn, and all the crazy stuff that goes with a dysfunctional financial relationship. You know, so get your financial literacy in order. If there's addiction or something that makes that a challenge, of course you have to address that first. But I guarantee you, once some of those gross, debilitating behaviors are moved aside, you're going to feel good about yourself and about what uh, uh, you're doing financially in America. I'm inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. He's written some great books, easy to find on YouTube, and he talks a lot better on these issues than I do. I just have experience that I wasn't able to articulate. When I ran into his material through a mutual friend of ours, I don't know him personally. He brought all the pieces together and told me, this is why I'm having this experience as a black man in America. First, we're going to talk about his one book. If you get only one book, get this one. A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, PowerNomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at PowerNomics.com. Behind me, you see the hashtag #US2 symbol. You find black women coming together, supporting one another and their issues. There are some specific issues between black men and black women. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, for Black Facebook experience. And if you can't find your flavor on this big World Wide Web, do what I did. Start your own and see what you can drum up. And finally, we take a fictional look at slave life in America. A lot of the sources of our conversation come from America's dark past of slavery, free labor, rape, lynching, and all that. Well, we look at Uncle Tom's Cabin to have some great conversations around those issues. And today we're in PowerNomics, page 98. It's a chapter, has a few suggestions that Dr. Anderson has about education reform. Excuse me, and education is that's got to be a very important topic, concern, primary factor in our discussion about black change, because I think everybody, if I can appeal to the majority ad populum, is we want to find societies, wise societies, having a great concern over how the young are being treated, raised, and their upbringing, their education. It's no different for black folks. And, black folks, we don't have any different values. We look at Uncle Tom's Cabin, and I look around, even in today's society, it seems as though some groups think that black people have a different value system. You find it a lot in Uncle Tom's Cabin, although that's a fictional account. It does illustrate some of the real viewpoints in for white minds in America at that time, and that is that black people didn't have the capacity for genuine religion, worship of God, didn't have value of the family and stuff like that. Now, I mean, it apparently looks like that when white people are tearing families apart and telling people how to worship, and, exercising absolute control in those areas. Very sad indeed. Um, but that's a myth. That's not so. Black people are just as concerned with their children and their young and relationships, families, as any other group in the world. Dr. Anderson's commentary on this education reform about controlling public and independent schools, it's coming from his informed ideas and opinions about how schools should run. He was very influential, spent time in Detroit in that school system, spent time very high up in the education system of the state of Florida. So when it comes to education and what he's got to say about it, his resume speaks for itself as far as what needs to be done, how we can make some positive moves for black children, children in general, right? He talks about education being central and critical for sustaining the community. That's the future. What you talk to that child about, and it's like I talked about at the top of this segment here is that it's trajectory and degrees, um, navigating in degrees in your intention. Take this child, and we don't want the child to have any excuse, any type of reason to give us any blowback in the future. I probably have numerous complaints and reflections, hindsight being 2020, about my education and the influences I had in my life. So the black people do have a responsibility to bring bring the proper resources to the table so these young people can grow up and become leaders, men and women, in the community, and sustain um, a thriving, positive, growing, influential black community. And that's going to start, of course, with us grown-ups and how we give back, how we educate, hold accountable, train our young people uh, into being in the world, right? So, leaning on history, Dr. Anderson, he says, like 1977, there were a lot of opportunities, a lot of, I guess, rhetoric going on, especially with the Supreme Court, saying the community is in control of the direction of their schools, right? And so it's quite simple on its face. School in this neighborhood, that neighborhood, whatever, was under the control of those people because that's where the kids went to school. The taxes are paying for that school, so it just makes sense that they would have control. Now that probably worked uh, generally across the board for white communities and white schools, but not so much so for black schools. With black schools, you still, had white people usurping control, controlling curriculum, even though they weren't paying the bills. I say, I think I wrote there in my description, you know, in my community, if I knew I had the power and the say, that curriculum about slavery would really be tempered. You know, my education, the way I was informed, that my ancestors probably were slaves and under the control of the ancestors of my white counterparts there sitting next to me. It was just kind of presented to me, and so I have my emotional guts hanging out, and there's no follow-up, there's no empowerment, there's no checking in with this idea in my young mind that I have to process this information that at one time white people had this absolute autonomous control over my people. I think that there needs some commentary, needs some debriefing in school and in the home. And that's just one aspect of education I could think about that is really contributes to some, maybe even some of the debilitating dysfunction that exists in America. You're telling black people essentially they're worthless in the system, expendable, all this stuff, and scratching your head that there's incarceration and there's all these challenges going on. So, black people have to get with that. But getting back to where tax money goes in control of this educational space, you know, um, even you still have, and Dr. Anderson writes about this, in PowerNomics about, you still have this remote white control bearing influence into these schools in the black community. I want to say just a quick thing about busing and all that. And Senator Harris, she's glad she got bused. I'm glad we got bused. I got bused. It wasn't a forced busing thing, like she experienced. I got busted, I think, for other reasons. But see, the problem is, with education, the white people didn't want to put the resources into the black community. They kept it outside. Therefore, blacks had to go and get, go away. Reinforcing and reinforcing the idea that the black community did not offer proper resources for success in America. You're telling young black people, that their community isn't good enough, that their education isn't good enough, that you're conditioning the black people to always reach out for a white solution to their problems. That may not always be the case. It may not always have to be the case. So, it's a little side note about busing. You know, it's another one of those American enigmas that's right and wrong at the same time. It's right to go get some education and all that, but it's wrong to have the appearance, the optics, which what they say on CNN, the appearance, the optics that my community isn't good enough to create and support an idea of success in America. I have to go over here. And yeah, the community may have drugs, violence, poor resources for their schools. But America just had to reinforce the issue, instead of you supporting black communities, holding black communities accountable, stuff like that. They just said, no, let's just take the black child out. The success is outside. Another aspect that Dr. Anderson brings out here is that, let's say control isn't remote, that the community has black leadership. We've been talking about black leadership a lot past couple days. He says, look, black leadership may be in control of that space, that educational space in a black neighborhood. However, that black leadership may be just listening to, or maybe just a tool for white interest in America. It's like, yeah, you may have a black superintendent, black principal, black board, and all this stuff. But if they're supported by, if the resources come from, to, or through white influence, then you're still dealing with a remote white power structure having extreme influence on the minds of the black children, that future black resource in the black neighborhood. So Dr. Anderson, he's like, be aware of that. Where's this? What's the power structure? Where's this coming from? And us black folks, we're conditioned not to ask. We're conditioned not to probe, make too much of a fuss, and don't rock the boat too much. Don't inquire too deeply. Never push too hard for exercising your own will. And this is the attitude, this is conditioning that goes all the way back to slavery times. When the black person had no say any type of contrary motion or desire, will, was seen as dangerous, and had to be stamped out immediately. At work, I said, they came at me with an issue, and I said, okay, well, this is an issue. I ain't heard nothing about it since. My legitimate concern um, had no weight against their policy and stuff like that. This is superfluous policy. I challenged it. You know, plenty of silence. It's like hands off. In a way, they're just waiting for me to leave. I think it's the kind of thing. It's the kind of job they need every hand they can get on any given night, and but that's not personable anymore. Now that I've expressed myself. Yeah. So that may be a long time to heal. But getting back on topic here, in education, black people need to be empowered, feel empowered, perform um, empowering things. Now, I don't have kids yet, and so it's not high on my radar. I'm hoping that if, or I should say, hoping that when things turn around, that I'm going to be engaged um, in who's teaching my children, what they're being taught. You know, do they keep up? Are they feeling empowered in the classroom to ask questions? Things like that. But you don't find that. Not. You know, when I grew up in my home, you know, I think my parents were just glad I went to school and came back. But very little interest in, um, very little consistent interest in what was going on. I brought home, of course, my report card and things like that. I was prone to acting out occasionally, so they'd get some of those reports occasionally and whatnot. Um, but the conditioning for black folks in regards to education um, is still that kind of passive representation of themselves in the world. We're trusting the white system to do right by us, but they're only conditioning us to be workers. They're not challenging us to think as business owners and entrepreneurs. We got to go outside. We got to wait till we can legally get away from the public education system to begin finding that kind of stuff outside. Uh, but the education is for conditioning the mind to be passive and to be kind of a drone for those higher structures in America. Find with education, you look back, some of these big names like Rockefeller and got families like that were like, yeah, let's educate them, but let's have control of that and educate them our way, condition them uh, for passivity, so that when they come out, they're not trying to start their own thing, live their own life. We want them to insert themselves into our system, into our regime. Now, fortunately, a lot of that has changed. That was true and kind of worked for my parents, where they stayed in a job or field for over 40 years and had retirement, and that's, works like that. The whole financial system just doesn't work that way anymore. People don't do that anymore. There is more movement. around, and people have to make their own way. Education reform, you know, it begins, we want to control the young minds of the people of our community. The Supreme Court says that the community is in control of the educational space, and we have to do our little bit of homework, feel empowered to ask questions about, um, if that control is it being expressed in the best interest of the community. I can tell you what, I bet your white folks are, get down with that, go to whatever meetings or are apprised of changes and things like that. I wonder what it's like in a black community. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. It's day 259 out of the way. Moving right along. 365 days toward racial change. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.